It's a mixed up world. It's a mixed up. Hello, hello, my little Ellis-Bextorites. You're watching a new episode of ElliXia's Discography Dive, a series in which we dive into the discographies of some of my favourite artists. This season, we are diving into the discography of none other than Sophie Ellis-Bextor. Each week, we will be discussing an album of Sophie's. In the lead up to her 7th studio album, Hannah, which comes out on the 2nd of June, at the time of recording. Before we get into today's video, I would like to just do the standard YouTube shouts out. Please give it a subscribe and a like if you like this video, even share it if you're feeling generous. And if you like what you see, you can follow me on my social medias. All my social medias are in the description on the link below. This week we are discussing album number 2, 2003's Shoot From The Hip. I feel very much like I'm, recreating the album cover here. And of course, just like last week, it is also available in a lovely vinyl, courtesy of Plastic Hot Records. Today's look is inspired by the album. I mean, visually with this album, there's not a lot. There was only 2 music videos, and there wasn't a tour either. But in some of the photo shoots, plus in the mixed up world video, she's wearing a green dress. She had blonde hair. This is her iconic blonde hair era, which was a little bit controversial at the time. Isn't it amazing how female pop stars can change their hair and then suddenly people are like, oh, I don't like this album anymore. Sophie Ellis-Bextor's Shoot From The Hip walked so that Katy Perry's Witness could run. Shoot From The Hip was released on the 27th of October 2003. This album reached number 19 on the albums chart. It went silver in the UK and it yielded 2 singles, Mixed Up World and I Won't Change You, both of which reached the top 10, and this is the only Sophie Ellis-Bextor album that has that claim where every single went in top 10. There was only 2 singles, but we'll take what we can get. The album campaign was very brief. Mixed Up World was released in October, and then I Won't Change You at the end of December, and then there was no further releases from this record. During the making and promotion of this album, Sophie discovered that she was going to be a mother for the first time. And actually, I'm filming this on the 28th of April. It was actually Sunny's birthday earlier this week, so happy belated birthday to Sunny. This one's for you. Not that you know me or that you're going to watch it, but The CD contains a little card with tour dates for 2004 on them. This tour didn't end up going ahead. This is also something of a transitional album because she was in a relationship for 6 years prior to this album being made, and that relationship ended. There's some darkness on this record, but then there's also a lot of happiness as well because it was when she was meeting and getting to know Richard, who would go on to become her husband, which of course we will get into right now as we dive in to this album's track listing. This album opens up with Making Music, which is a UK-only bonus track. Making Music is a very good opener, actually. It starts off with some rather aggressive synths, and it has a lot of sort of metallic, mid-tempo goodness about it. She's talking about the pleasure of making music and making it with somebody as well. Is it a metaphor for sex? It might be. I can't tell if it's a metaphor for love making, which it might be. I'm not really sure, but either way, it's a good song. A lyric that I really like is, words can sometimes fail me, but rhythm's on my side. Because same. And there's a good spoken word bit as well on this song in the middle 8, which stylistically, in terms of rhythm, sort of echoes Madonna's Vogue. It's nothing like Madonna's Vogue in terms of the lyrical content, but it's a really good thing. My only criticism is her vocals are very quiet on it, so it's hard to tell what she says. I haven't even learned it, and you know me, I know every Sophie Ellis-Bextor song. You'd think I'd have learned the spoken word bit, but I actually couldn't recite it for you right now. Flop fan, am I right? Making Music works as a nice opener because I think it eases you into what this album is going to contain. There's a lot of mid-tempo on this record in general, and I think there's quite a bit of minimalism at points. And then for the rest of the world, track 1, but for us in the UK, track 2, we have Mixed Up World. Mixed Up World was the album's lead single, released in October 2003, in the same week that Sugar Babes released Hole in the Head and Emma Bunton released Maybe, so this was a very good week for releases. I wasn't an avid music fan at that point because I was embarrassed to like pop music because I was in high school and I was like, oh no, I can't like that. But trust me, if I was a big fan, I would have been eating very good that week. I've definitely made it for it since. I absolutely adore Mixed Up World. It's easily my favourite track on this album, and it's one of my favourite Sophie songs, full stop. Lyrically, it addresses, feeling a little bit lost in this world. It was a very, we do live in crazy times, you know, all the time it seems. What I like about Mixed Up World is that it doesn't specifically reference things, but it could be about the world at large. It could also be about your personal life and how everything seems to be going mad in your life, which kind of, I guess, does sort of sum up Sophie at that point, given the breakup and then meeting her husband and then impending motherhood. Like, it probably was all a bit like, oh God, you know. Mixed Up World has like a very sort of 80s synthy Pet Shop Boys feel to it. I love, love, love the sort of spoken word hook that's at the intro and sort of in between the choruses, whereas it's a mixed up world, it's a mixed up. Love it so much. It's a song that's helped me a lot, to be honest. Like, you know, when I've gone through some turbulent emotional times in the past, I've listened to Mixed Up World. In fact, when I first discovered Mixed Up World, because I didn't discover it for, you know, a number of years after its release. When I first heard the song, I was going through a little bit of a rough patch where, you know, things were permanently changing in my life, and it very much helped me with that. The lyric, when you're feeling kind of mixed up, just remember it's a mixed up world, and when you're feeling life is just too tough, remember you are a real tough girl. Whether you're a girl or a guy or somewhere in between, it's true. You are a real tough girl. I love the change as well. The first pre-chorus is like, I want to turn and run, we've got to find a place to go, we've got to run away from this problem. And then the second pre-chorus is, no, we're going to stand firm, we're going to fight this issue, we're going to address this issue and face it head on. I love, you know, that growth. Mixed Up World deserves to be #1, or it deserves to be #2, because I think that week Sugar Baes were rightly #1, but it deserves to be #1 the week after, for like 7 weeks, if you ask me. It's like, you know, the #1s for October 2003 in the UK should have just been an alternation between the two, because they're both fantastic songs. On to track #3 and single #2, we have I Won't Change You. I think I Won't Change You is a really cute, feel-good song. It addresses that feeling of, I used to change who I was to try and get a man. I used to think I had to, you know, be this, that, and the other, but then actually once I decided to be myself, I found the right person. And it's very cutesy. And I think it is an important message, you know. At the end of the day, you have to be yourself. I love the lyric, in sickness and in health, baby, always be yourself. Because it's true, like, you can spend your time trying to change yourself, you know, whether that is for the purposes of a partner or whether it's to fit in with a group of friends. You need to be yourself, because if they don't like you for who you really are, then they're not worth having around. The lyric, you're the one who showed me I had everything right, you know, that doesn't just, to me, that doesn't just apply to a romantic partner, but I think friendship is also, it's very relevant to that. The video is really cute and fun as well. Sophie goes speed dating, and there's a rather dishy man, and I have to say, he is very attractive, the man in the video who plays her love interest, and she likes them a lot. So what she does is she becomes a master of disguise and she starts pretending to be different people to be able to constantly be on a speed date with him. It's another one of those things with the early Sophie Ellis-Bextor videos where you sort of think of like the lore of it, and it's like, it's really obvious that it's the same person, but then I think that's kind of the, you know, the point. He's like smiling and laughing as if he's like, oh, it's you again, haha, you know. And in the end of the video, they end up together. And there's a lovely shot of the end of the video as well, where they're embracing each other, and the Sophie in the embrace is, you know, is changing with the different versions of her from the video. I feel like the video itself was maybe a bit of a response to the response to her having blonde hair. In my research, I watched her do a performance of Mixed Up World on Top of the Pops, and I believe it's Fern Cotton who is like, what do you prefer, Sophie's blonde hair or Sophie's brunette bob? Like, and I know if I was Sophie, I'd be thinking, oh, does that really matter? It's the music, babe, it's the music. But I feel like this video might have been like a bit of a response to like, well, actually, Sophie looks good in any hair. She has red hair, brunette hair, short, long, blonde, and she looks great in all of them. I Won't Change You reached #9 on the albums chart. It was released the week after Christmas, so that's not a particularly high-selling week. I'm not sure what the strategy was. Funnily enough, it was released, though, in the same week, the same day, that Victoria Beckham released her, to date, final single, double A side, This Groove and Let Your Head Go, which, side note, needs to be on streaming because it's one of the best solo Spice songs. But anyway, this isn't Victoria Beckham's Discography Dives, this is Sophie's. But it's just funny to me because that's the second time that the two of them went up together in the charts, because when Groove Jet was released, Victoria released her debut single, Out of Your Mind. Sophie won that chart battle, Victoria won this one because she reached #3. And controversial opinion, but in the instance of these, you know, two releases, maybe off for Victoria's? Maybe? I don't know. We then move on to track #4, which is Nowhere Without You. Now, all the singles are out of the way, but I do believe Nowhere Without You was maybe pipped to be a third single. That never happened. There was an official remix commissioned by Polydor that went unreleased, so either that was going to be for the single or it was going to be a B-side to something else, I don't know. Nowhere Without You, though, is an absolutely lovely song. It is very peaceful and serene. It's a lovely song to listen to on a sunny afternoon, you know, when you're gazing at the window or taking a nice hot bath, you know what I mean? It's very much a lovely, peaceful, calm song. Sophie's vocal delivery in the chorus is really, really, again, peaceful. It's very gentle. It addresses a new relationship and how happy she is to find this person. I can only assume that this was maybe written about Richard, given that even though her and Richard only got together shortly before this album's release, they knew each other before and they couldn't get together yet because there was, you know, they both had partners at the time and things were getting in the way, but obviously feelings were there. They became very close very quickly. And I read about that in the book and I was tearing up a bit because I was just like, that's so sweet. Me and Who, though. On to track 5, we have Another Day. Another Day, Another Sleigh. Am I right? I'm so sorry. Another Day is one of my favourites on this album as well. It's mid-tempo, but it's got a bit of punch behind it. It's an ode to friendship, especially like a friendship amongst her female friends. And subsequently, I really like it because, you know, we get a lot of pop songs that are about love, whether that's good or bad. And I really appreciate songs about friendship. You know, growing up, I didn't have any boyfriends or girlfriends. And so I used to always sing songs from the perspective of being friends, if it was, you know, about feelings towards or against somebody. And a lot of the earlier songs I wrote were about friendships and whether they'd gone wrong or something. So like, to have a song that is an ode to being close to one of your fellow girlfriends is really, really nice. It's a song that I've definitely related to. A lot of my close friends are women and we have that like kindred connection that you don't get necessarily with a romantic one. And I can remember listening to Another Day and thinking, oh, this is just like me and some of my girls, you know what I mean? Also, Another Day has an expertly crafted key change as well, which is always a big fan of those. Track number 6 is Party in My Head. This is a bit of a weird one. So like production-wise and sonically, it's a very straightforward song. It's very simple. Sophie is singing about a party that is happening in her head. And the song is like she's basically tricked herself into like having a party in her head and describing the chaos that's happening. But the song itself sounds very breezy and very chill. It's definitely quirky for sure. I really like it and it's quite impressive because she's able to rhyme many different things with head. Like pretty much every line ends in a rhyme with ed. A lot of eds going on. And it also has Sophie singing the word orgy, which, you know, that's always a plus. I also believe Party in My Head was another one that was pipped to be a single, but I don't know. Again, this is stuff I read on the internet years ago and I couldn't find any verification of that or clarification of it or any sort of suggestions of it upon my research this time around, but Party in My Head would have made a good single, I think. I think it definitely would have, there could have been some really interesting video ideas for this. Given how creative a lot of Sophie's videos were in their storyline, I actually think the alternative music video to Music Gets the Best of Me, you know, the one I was horrified about in last week's episode, that would really suit this song. Like, I can just imagine some sort of chaotic house party that's sort of like filmed as if it's, you know, those kind of music videos where it looks like it's filmed in one shot and it's in continuous motion. A bit like Kylie's Love at First Sight video. The second video I'd mention that in now. And like, I can imagine it being loads of different Sophies just doing weird things. And a shout out to the original demo as well, because the demo version leaked online, produced by Greg Alexander, and this version has a bit more of an interesting sounding instrumental, but it also has a completely different lyric change. On the album version, she sings, "There's no charge, the entry's free, I gave the doorman a kiss, you see." On the demo version, she sings, "There's no charge, the entry's free, I gave the doorman ecstasy." Well, I never. Track number 7 is Love It Is Love. Not entirely sure what that means, Love It Is Love. Obviously the phrase Love Is Love is a popular slogan that's often used for pride campaigning, but that's not what this song is about. Grammatically, is it meant to be like love, comma, it is love? I don't know, but it's not styled like that. Anyway, regardless of what this song means, it's actually a really good song. It's what I would describe as like a minimal groove, as it were. It's reminiscent of some of Read My Lips' more up-tempo cuts. It's got that sort of subtlety to it where it's sort of building to a climax that it doesn't quite reach, but not in that it fails to reach. It purposely doesn't reach. You know, like kind of like leads you on and leaves you wanting more, and then just pulls back at the right moment, and makes you lose your shit basically. And the middle eight has this great sort of little breakdown with the drums. It's kind of like sort of a samba beat. I really, really enjoy it. This song is a little bit Groove Jet adjacent, I suppose. Like obviously it's not as good as Groove Jet, but there's similarities in like melodically. The orchestral version of Groove Jet on the Orchestral Greatest Hits actually sounds quite similar, I think, in certain parts. Then we have track number 8, which is absolutely one of my favorites on this record, You Get Yours. It very much addresses a toxic relationship, and I feel like there's an element of we're both hypocrites and we're both, bad for each other. The song is quite aggressive. It has quite a rock influence on it. The first line is, "You're selfish like me. That's why we get along famously." It feels rather sort of confessional, and like part of it is sort of ashamed to be acting this way. The other part of it is very much like, well, this is me and this is who I am, and if we're going to be together, then we just have to be like, we just have to accept that with each other. The best part of the song, though, is absolutely the middle 8, because the whole song is quite rocky and aggressive, but the middle 8 cuts that out and is very subtle. And it's the hook of "Tell me you love me, and this time mean it." It's quite seductive, it's very soft. And then when she goes, "and this time mean it," and then it goes into like back into the rocky version again, I really, really love it. Adds a layer. It adds a layer to the song, and I think it's wonderful. Moving swiftly along to track number 9, we have "The Walls Keep Saying Your Name." This one's a very interesting one to me. It's rather camp, is rather sinister as well. It kind of sounds very dramatic and suspenseful. Again, a bit similar to Love It As Love, where it's teasing towards a peak it doesn't quite reach, but then I think that adds to the suspenseful. Is suspenseful a word? It is now. That factor that, makes you feel a bit uneasy when you listen to it. Lyrically, it addresses a relationship that has ended and how the spirit of this man is haunting Sophie. It's driving her mad. Like, the walls are literally saying his name. Kind of like Miss Trunchbull in Matilda, isn't it? With that guy. That's the only time in my life I'll probably ever draw similarities between Sophie Ellis-Bextor and Miss Trunchbull. But the song addresses like the torment she's feeling of this failed relationship. And I think the song would make for a really interesting video. I can imagine Sophie like in this house that's like going crazy, and like at the same time she's looking very glamorous. I'm seeing like Joan Crawford or Faye Dunaway as Joan Crawford, somewhat similarly to the Victoria Beckham song that I mentioned earlier, where that video was inspired by Joan Crawford as well. See, it's all interlinked. It's all, we live in a simulation. There's a lyric that I absolutely love in this song, which is, "Let me be, insanity doesn't flatter me." It's like, not only are you tormenting my brain, but also I'm looking ridiculous doing so, and I don't appreciate it. The only downside to this song for me is it's got a guest vocal from Andy Boyd, who apparently, according to, when I looked him up, he was her ex-boyfriend and her ex-manager. I'm not really a fan of his vocals on the track, because he sings from the perspective of the boy who is tormenting her, and how he couldn't handle her intensity, and that's why he left. I don't think it's really necessary, if I'm honest, in the song. Like, the song will be absolutely fine without him in it. No offense to Andy Boyd. I looked him up and I don't know, all I could find was, a news report saying that they're broken up back in 2003, so I don't know anything about him. Track number 10 is another UK-only bonus track, and this one is called "I Won't Dance With You." Fun fact, in some pressings it's called "I Won't Dance Without You," but that's never said in the song. "I Won't Dance With You" addresses a man who is very well known on the dance floor, in the club or whatever it is, and how he's very, suave, and all the ladies love him. And she's like, "Well, I don't want to cramp your style, but also maybe you need to calm your ego down, and maybe I will dance with you." And I like that there's a bit of a storyline, because the chorus is she's saying, "I won't dance with you," but then in the final chorus it is, "I will dance with you," because, she comes around to the idea. "I Won't Dance With You" is a song that, admittedly, I was indifferent towards it, but in doing my research for this album and this series, I've actually really warmed to it, and I actually really like it. The instrumental's got a lot of character, and it actually sounds to me, in a strange way, like a Tekken 3 song, which is high praise because that soundtrack is brilliant. I can just imagine actually like a video or a performance of the song where like the whole video she's being really stiff and being really like, "Oh, I won't dance with you, I don't want to cramp your style, I'm just gonna stay demure on the floor, only for the last chorus when she will dance with him to bust out into some amazing moves. You know, it's been 20 years, but you know, it's never too late. Track number 11 is I Am Not Good at Not Getting What I Want. This changes the pace quite a bit. It's actually a very slow, quite sort of 60s inspired ballad. It kind of gives a bit of Dusty Springfield, I suppose. And this is a song that addresses an unrequited love, or not necessarily unrequited, but like, I really like this guy and I don't know if he likes me back, but I really want him. I'm being a bit of a brat because I know I should be grateful for what I have, but oh, I really want this guy. It's funny, one of the lyrics is maybe I sound like a spoiled baby, and it's like, oh, spoiled babies have never sounded that good, Sophie, I can tell you that. Interestingly enough, actually, when I was looking at live performances for this album, I couldn't find any for any of the album tracks on YouTube, with the exception of the 2 singles when they were being promoted on TV. And as far as I can tell, I Am Not Good at Not Getting What I Want is the only song that has ever been done live from this album, aside from the single. Obviously, as we covered before, there was no tour for this album, but 10 years later, when she was touring Wanderlust, and I actually got to see this live myself, she sang I Am Not Good at Not Getting What I Want. Because of the change of style in Wanderlust, which of course we will get to when the time comes, Sophie went sort of back into her discography and was like, what songs can I maybe reuse that I haven't done before in this new style? And I'm Not Good at Not Getting What I Want, which is a very long title to say, try saying that 5 times, made the cut of the set list. And I think we've established at this point, I'm quite a fan of Sophie's deep cuts. So when I saw her live on the Wanderlust tour and she did this song, I was really like, oh God, that's amazing, I love it. Track number 12, the album's official closer, shall we say, is Hello, Hello. Now you understand why I said hello, hello at the start of the video. Now this song is a gorgeous ballad, if you ask me. And you do ask me because you're watching my video. It addresses like an existential crisis. She sings about feeling alone, even sort of disappearing a little bit and going on a self-discovery journey. Again, I've had similar experiences myself where I've maybe had to disappear for a little bit just for sort of my own sanity. And people are like, where did you go? Like, you didn't give any explanation. And I'm just like, well, I'm back now and this is what happened. And the song is very sensitive and it's very melancholy, but it's also quite hopeful. You know, she sings about how she wants to share what she's learned during her time away and like her sort of time in isolation, and now she wants to hopefully share it with either a partner or a group of friends. The reason why I say group of friends is because she says, so now you all know. So that suggests to me that like people were maybe concerned about like what was going on. But she wants to share with them what she's learned so that, you know, they can grow and learn. And I think it's a really, really lovely song. And it's a lovely melancholy closer. You know, the last like minute or so of the song is just purely instrumental. I think it's really, really well done. And you'd think that concludes the main body of the album, but it actually doesn't. Now, you young people watching may not remember this, but back in the day on CDs, we'd often have hidden tracks. Sometimes those hidden tracks would be just not listed on the case, and when you put it into a CD player, there'd be an extra numbered track, or you put it into a laptop and it'd be there. Or it would be added on to the end of the last track, which would have like a gap of silence before, like if you leave the track playing, eventually a new one will start. And this is the case with Shoot From The Hip. You see here, Hello Hello is track number 12, the last track. If you keep playing the track, a cover of Olivia Newton-John's 80s classic Physical starts playing. And on the Plastic Pop reissue, Physical is a standalone track. However, digitally, Physical still is only available at the end of Hello Hello. So like the Hello Hello upload onto Spotify is 30 minutes because there's like a whole song's worth of silence in between. And like, I'm not being funny, but it's 2023. Like, can we have Physical as an individual track on Spotify, please? Like, again, Polydor, if you're watching, please address that. Thank you. Physical, obviously, you know, the original Olivia Newton-John is a classic. Everybody knows that song. Sophie's version is really good though. It's quite different. It's been updated for 2003. I don't really know how to describe it, but I really like it. It suits Sophie's voice really well. Sophie's sort of British accent and poshness and, you know, dry sense of humanness about it really suits the song. And I campaign hashtag get physical on streaming platforms. Justice for Physical. I'm an activist. That closes out the album. We do have 2 B-sides. for each of the singles. B-side number 1 was a B-side to Mixed Up World. This is called The Earth Shook the Devil's Hand. That's a really good song title. That does not match what the song actually sounds like. The song is a very sort of like chilled, easy listening, I suppose. It's a stripped back acoustic song. I don't really know what it's about. The lyrics are very sort of, the song doesn't really go anywhere, and it's not a terrible song. It's not a favourite of mine. I still advocate for it to be on streaming because it's not on streaming, so, you know, Polydor, again, I will be outside Polydor's office with a placard, you know, I'll be holding up this being saying justice for the Earth Shook the Devil's Hand. I couldn't even remember what the song title was now, but Justice for the Earth Shook the Devil's Hand. Yeah! And then the other B-side is a much more popular one, and that is a cover of Bakara's Yes Sir, I Can Boogie. This was a B-side to I Won't Change You. According to the official charts in 2014, in like a little article I did about it, it's her 18th biggest selling song or something, and I don't really understand how that works given that it's not available digitally and it was only available as a B-side to a CD single, so it might be on various compilations possibly, but I don't really understand how that works. But congratulations to Yes Sir, I Can Boogie, you know, that's an achievement, I suppose. I love Sophie's cover of Yes Sir, I Can Boogie. Like Physical, Sophie's quite sort of matter-of-fact delivery and very posh delivery of the song really suits it. Like, it leans into like this level of campness, and I think Yes Sir, I Can Boogie is it's a cute number. And that wraps up Shoot From the Hip. The album is somewhat darker, I suppose, than To Read My Lips. Like, yeah, she had been going through a rough patch during this album. In fact, there's a very interesting passage about it from the book, actually. She says in Spinning Plates, "The whole adventure of the first album took about 1.5 years before attention properly turned to album number 2, Shoot From the Hip. By now, I knew no matter what, I had to try and get out of my relationship. I find it hard to listen to Shoot From the Hip. It's so raw in places. A lot of the songs are about new love beginning, old love dying, and the weirdness in the middle. It's not that I don't like the record. I do. But I was going through so much when I wrote it. I wasn't thinking commercially. I just wanted to write what I was feeling. And that confusion is so apparent. Each album I've done is a diary entry, and this entry was painful. I wrote it in the anguish of finding my way out of a relationship. Still, aren't I lucky that my day job means I can explore that stuff rather than ignoring it. It's very cathartic, even if it's a little close to the bone." This album definitely doesn't get referenced to very much. Like, Mixed Up World really is the only song that ever gets done on tour. And Mixed Up World was the only representation of this album on both the greatest hits that she's done since as well. But I think it's a really good record. Sometimes I think of Shoot From the Hip and I kind of think, I don't, you know, it's not really an album that I'm that fussed about. But then I listen to it and I look at each track individually and I'm like, oh, I actually really like this one. It took me a little while to get into it because when I first bought this album, it was retrospectively when Make a Scene was released, and there were 3 other albums as well at that time, so my attention wasn't fully on one album. But I can remember it got to a point where I was like, I really like this song, I really like that song, but I was still regarding like Shoot From the Hip as like an album that I didn't know that well. But it's only time I sort of looked at it, I was like, oh, actually, I like all these songs like loads individually, so maybe I like this album more than I give it credit for. And that wraps up Shoot From the Hip. We have Shot From Our Hips, as it were. I don't know what the saying Shoot From the Hip means. I know it is some kind of terminology, but I don't know, I'm sorry. But that wraps up this episode of ElliXia's Discography Dives. I hope you've had a nice time. I know I have, so I hope you have too. Don't forget to join us next week when we will be discussing 2007's Trip the Light Fantastic, which is not only my favourite Sophie album, but one of my favourite albums of all time. I have a lot to say about this album, so buckle up. And with that being said, thank you very much for joining me today. I have been ElliXia Q Valentine. Don't forget to stay safe, stay gorgeous, and do all that lovely stuff. And of course, please book me. Mwah.